Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie paper and ink. Bunch of cards, bunch of tags, a long video. I am using the Waffle Flower Happy Gnomes stamp set. I'm not even exactly sure when this came out, but they recently released a pattern paper pack that is designed by the same designer and it matches these perfectly, which I will get into more in the video. But to start off with, I have BRISTOL smooth cardstock in my Misty platform here because I'm stamping pretty much all the images. I think I used every single image from the Happy Gnome set. And I am stamping them with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. This little doohickey that I use on the lid of my Misty. I mention it every time I use it in videos. It's just a whiteboard eraser. Anything with felt on the bottom of it is going to work. It just helps to kind of glide along the lid and press stamps down to get a better impression without having to really press with my fingers so much. So anywho, I stamped the images with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. As always, you could just stamp it, let it dry, and then color them. I like to heat emboss them because stamping on BRISTOL smooth cardstock, especially with an ink like the VersaFine Clair, there's a coating on BRISTOL Smooth and this ink can smear. Plus, I really like having that little bit of a raised edge. Just makes my life a little easier, less chance of me smearing things. So I heat embossed everything with Wow's Clear Matte Dull embossing powder, which gives me the raised edge, but it's also dull, so it's not shiny, and it's just depends on my mood sort of a thing. But with images like this, I kind of like that matte finish to it. So once everything's colored, I am coloring these in with my Karin. I'm calling them Karin. Apparently it's supposed to be Karin. I don't know. I can't remember, but Karin Brushmarker Pros. I've done a few videos on these. It's been a while since I've used them, so that I was like, I'm going to use them this time. That's just the mood I was in. So I will post a picture on my blog because I already posted on my Instagram, but I'll post it on my blog as well. The image I took with the specific colors I used. I kept the coloring really, really simple. For all their skin, I used a combination of Prairie and Skin 01. And depending on what I was doing, some of the images, like some of the parts of the images, I colored directly with the markers. Some I would add color with the marker and then pull it out with a water brush. I have this piece of white cardstock here that I'm using to rest my hand on because I learned the hard way. A lot of people, like a lot of artists do that. They will have a piece of scratch paper to rest their hands on so you're not smearing things and all that sort of a thing. Yeah, it's a good idea because off camera, I did end up doing that because like the oils my hands were picking up and smearing some of these because I'm working on BRISTOL Smooth, which is nice because you get more of a blend. Things take longer to dry, but if you're not careful, you can smear them. And when I've got, a whole pile of images like this, some of the ones along the bottom, I was smearing with my hands when I was coloring the ones at the top because I wasn't paying attention. So having that piece of scrap paper to rest my hand on sometimes when I'm coloring, and also by this point, I was much more aware that this was happening. So I was trying very hard not to do that because no one likes having to restamp and recolor images after you spent all the time on them. So I kept the coloring simple though. I used colors that went with the pattern papers I'm going to use and just went along and filled in all the little characters. And then once everything was completely dry, and this took longer to dry, especially the parts where I colored directly with markers and didn't blend it out with water at all. Those definitely took longer, but I really like how the Brushmarker Pros work on the BRISTOL Smooth because you do get a better blend and it just kind of glides along. So it's up to personal preference. But once they were completely dry, I used the coordinating wafer die set and die cut all of these. And like I said, I had done a set of these images already, so I have double kind of everything. So I'd stamped everything, colored everything, and die cut everything twice. And then I also, for like sentiments, because that Happy Gnome stamp set, like I said, there's this coordinating paper. It's so cute. So cute. So yeah, the coordinating paper, the characters in the paper are the exact same size as the stamps. So you can die cut all of them if you have the coordinating wafer dies, which I end up doing. I die cut several of those sheets of the little coordinating characters. So I will, use those further along in the video. And then there's papers with like, you know, all these mushrooms on them. There's papers with little scenes, all that. I use a lot of them. I kind of went nuts and started just making card after card after card. It was fun. So I used my Waffle Flower A2 layers wafer dies to die cut some of the pattern papers. And then these big Merry sentiments, I actually used these, I think it was last year's Christmas series. I'll link to it. But this is the oversized Merry wafer die, and I die cut it from white cardstock, and both of these are stacked with 3 layers of cardstock. So I stacked them, and then I decided I was going to leave them white originally, but then I decided I wanted to give them a little bit of an ombre look. So I did some very simple ink blending with one of my blending brushes, and I started with Simon's Green Apple ink, which is the lighter green. And then once I had blended that on, just kind of starting from the bottom and then just pulling the color up at the top and stopping. So I got a nice little ombre. And then I took Green Leaf, which is about a shade darker, and added that more along the bottom. So it just kind of gives it that little extra something. So I did that to both of these die cuts. So I've got that great big huge Merry. And then off camera, it was technically on camera, but I had some corrupted footage. That's also why. It's been one thing after another. But anywho, off camera, I stamped the word Christmas from the oversized Merry stamp set onto red cardstock and white heat embossed it. So I've got that, so it'll say Merry Christmas. And then I have some of the Happy Gnomes pattern paper here. I think this is one of my favorites. I don't know. There's something about the color combo too. I love how a lot of it is not specifically Christmas. Even the Happy Gnome stamp set isn't Christmas really. You got all your little gnomes, and then there's like the candy cane image, but you can use them all year round. I'm of course in a Christmas card mood, so all these are Christmas cards. But as I was doing it, I was like, oh, you know, you can do birthdays, you can do anything. But anyway, I really love this dark blue pattern paper with the tulips. Oh, and yeah, and there's also holly leaves, but again, it doesn't have to be Christmas. So anywho, I matted that with some lighter blue cardstock that I also die cut with the rectangle A2 layers wafer dies. And then I just started creating little scenes. So I've got my big, huge die cut Merry, and then I'm just adhering different little elements from those images that I'd stamped and colored at the beginning, and popping some of them up here and there, just adhering them. And then once I was happy with it, I'm going to adhere the sentiment. And I did this twice because I had 2 die cuts. So I die cut 2 backgrounds, adhered all the little things, just did the same thing twice. And then once those are done, I'm going to adhere these 2 white card bases that are A2 sized. So I've got 2 card fronts done, because of course I'm going to finish the insides, but I'm going to do those a little bit later. And then I couldn't resist adding some white splatter. You could always leave it as is, but I had to get some white splatter in here somewhere. So these are part of that Happy Gnomes paper pack, both of which I die cut with the A2 layers. And since they're more like summer looking, I was like, well, I'm going to add it and make it look like it's starting to snow because Christmas is coming. So I heavily splattered these with picket fence distress paint. And I got a couple big blobs on the mushroom one, which would be okay, but then I decided to mess with it with my paintbrush, this one right there, and created an ugly blob. And because it's pattern paper, so it's a little bit coated, I just quickly wiped it off. We're good to go. Add more splatter. It's like it never happened, so I'm not too worried about it. So, add more paint, add more splatter. Like, I went heavy. Super, super duper heavy with the splatter on these 2 card fronts. And then I set those aside as well, let them dry, went and dealt with whatever I was dealing with. This was like a several day process, yet all of this could have been pretty much done in one sitting per se. It's been just one of those weeks, even though it's only Tuesday when I'm filming this. Anyway. Once I've got my backgrounds and they're dry, so that splatter's not going to smear anywhere, I built more little scenes with those characters that I had stamped and colored. And then these Merry Christmas sentiments are from the Essential Sentiments set. There's like a whole bunch of different sentiments, and that's where it's like, oh, I could do like thinking of you, thank you, get well soon. Like, I could have done like a whole card series with these papers and gnomes and everything, like kind of an all year round, which would make an amazing gift. But again, I was in Christmas card mood, so that's all I did. I just stamped that Merry Christmas multiple times, again onto red cardstock, white heat embossed it, and die cut it with the coordinating die. And I'll link to everything with the supplies like I always do. And then I built my little scene, so I just adhered my little characters and the sentiment onto that pattern paper. And then I matted that with some midnight green paper that I had die cut with a larger of the layers wafer dies. I find when I'm doing more kind of simple cards in this sense, simple compared to what I'm normally doing, you know, with the ink blending and the splatter and the bling and the, you know what I mean. So there's those papers. That's the thing with Waffle Flowers paper packs. If you're not familiar, I've done other videos using them. Waffle Flowers paper packs are 80-pound paper, and they are 5.5 by 8.5 inches. So they're actually meant, you can score them right down the middle and use them as your card base. So these ones specifically that I just showed, you would have the front and the back of the card with like a little continuation of a scene. So what I just did was I die cut the piece for the front, and then I die cut the part that was supposed to be for the back of the card, and I'm just adhering it to the inside of the card because I didn't want to not have that. It's so cute. And I like kind of love these like little woodland scene and the little scene with the mushroom house. So you can do whatever you want. You can use like, same with this mushroom paper. It was one piece. I could have scored it down the middle and just made it into one card. And you get multiple sheets. You get like three of each pattern, I think. Yeah, you get 3 of each pattern. So you get 36 sheets in a pack. So, and they have ones like this, and then they have other ones that are like dots and stripes and all that fun stuff. They're fun. So for all my cards though, I just die cut them. And then everything was just simple white card bases. And that's just what I like to do. So for my last couple of cards, I used the mushroom paper, which again is adorable. And then die cut a circle out in the middle of it just to kind of create a focal point. And then stuck in some more little characters and mushrooms and candy canes and another Merry Christmas sentiment. This one I did twice since I had the 2 pieces. And then just kind of tuck those into the little circle there. And then once I was happy with everything that I'd place my sentiment. Everything I'm adhering with craft tacky glue. And then I just keep putting like my little stack of acrylic blocks on top just to hold everything down and let that glue adhere. And I'd save those circles from those 2 card fronts. I'm going to use those on the inside of these cards. And then I pulled out a sentiment from the Holiday Hug stamp set. I really like the Sending Paper Hugs stamp. So I ended up deciding I use that on the inside of every single card because it's just perfect. So I stamped that with Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink on the inside of the card. And with these 2, I used that circle that was left over. And then on the insides of all the cards, I'm using all those little characters and elements that I had die cut from those pattern papers with the coordinating wafer die set. So it was another one of those things where you kind of mindless, just sit, run them through the machine, run them through the machine until I had just a pile. So I ended up just creating little random scenes on the insides of all my cards with all these little gnomes and mushrooms and whatnot. And I did it with these ones too, that I adhered the pattern paper. I could have just left this as is because like the pattern paper itself is just cute, but I have all these little die cut characters, so why not add them? So I adhered several of those on the inside as well. And with cards like this, I would either write right on top of the pattern paper with like a white gel pen, or right on the other side there, the blank part of the inside of the card, whatever works. So my first 2 cards that I did are the final 2 that I do the insides with. Stamp those sentiments, and then I just again took a bunch of those little elements that I die cut from the pattern paper pack and just kind of adhered them around the sentiment, just kind of creating fun little scenes on the inside of these cards. And even after doing 6 cards, I still had images left over, sentiments left over, a pile of pattern paper. I could have done, well, technically at least 3 times this many and still probably had pattern paper left over. But I still had images and sentiments, so I die cut some tags, because why not? We always need tags at Christmas time. So I used a swatch die. Waffle Flower also has all these like swatch sets. Again, I've done videos on those too. This is the combo swatch tag. So it has the little tag base, and then it has the little like rounded flat top piece, which I die cut from that red and white like the mushroom pattern paper in the pack, which I just love. I don't know what it is. There's something about gnomes and mushrooms. I think we're all just obsessed, and it's a fun obsession. It's adorable. So die cut the papers from those, using those 2 wafer dies. I also die cut some white cardstock with that tag die. I also die cut some circles from the pattern paper, and I let that kind of hang over the edge of all these tags just cuz. And then I adhered my little characters and the few little elements left over, added the little Merry Christmas sentiment. And then I'm going to, when I add the ribbon, I'm just going to back these with that white cardstock. They're not adhered at all. They're basically only attached by the ribbon. But that just gives it a little bit extra, like, strength, I guess, and a place to write something. So all I did was grab some just green ribbon from my stash and then threaded that through the tags. And then around the ribbon, I wrapped a double length of some red baker's twine that I doubled up. So just wrapped that around, tied it in a bow, fiddled with it a little bit, just, you know, to get it just so. And once I was happy with that, I'm just going to cut the tails of the ribbon. And then, as always, technically everything could be done here. But I needed some way to add something. So rather than bling, I pulled out a bunch of my Nouveau drops in a bunch of colors that went with all of these pattern papers. And again, I'll link to like all the specifics with the supplies, but I've got midnight blue and apple green and berry blue and white and red berry crystal drops. And I'm going to add these to all the tags and all the cards. So I had them laid out like all over my office with the doors shut so that they, you know, the pets can't get in, the kids don't touch anything, I don't knock things over, and I let them all dry. So with crystal drops, I hold the bottle straight up and down. I did have all of these. I've talked about this before. I stick them in my bra while I'm working. So these had sat like all shoved in my bra for a good 20 plus minutes. So that it just brings them up to body temperature or closer to body temperature. Because depending on your climate and all those things, if they're warmed up a little bit, they work a bit better. So I warmed them up a little bit. And then I apply them just holding the bottle straight up and down. And then as I'm letting go, after I've like applied a drop, as I'm letting go, I do that little swirl motion. And that helps to remove that little point to them. And then I tap them. So I just tap them on the back of an ink pad, that sort of thing. That helps to smooth them out a little bit. And it just gives them more of that enamel dot appearance. And then I just set them aside to dry. So I did that. I just kind of worked again in batches. I did all the tags and then I did each like set of cards, tapped them on to my surface and then set them aside to dry. And that was it. So it just gives it that little extra something with all of these cards. So they've got their little pattern paper and gnomes and enamel dots and all that fun stuff. So that was today's set of cards and tags. Like I said earlier, I will link to everything I used. I will also link to my blog post. And in my blog post, I'll post the pictures. I'll post a picture of the specific colors I used of the Karin brush markers. And then I will link to all the supplies I used. And in my blog post, it'll be picture links to all the supplies. So you can find everything if you are interested in that. You can just check it out in the description box below the video. And stay tuned. I will have a whole bunch more videos coming. Just working my way through the backlog. But as always, thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, for thumbs upping, for commenting. I very much appreciate it. And I hope to see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.